Hello everyone, welcome to the Learn Languages HD audio podcast. We love to have you with us. Make sure to learn something new today and expand your horizons for a little bit. This week, we are going to be talking about New Year. We will comment on popular New Year resolutions. However, we need to explain an important grammar concept, which is future tense, so that we could be talking about a future, about our predictions or plans anyways. So the topic for this week would be New Year resolutions and future tenses. Whether you are listening to this podcast because you want to learn grammar or just because you're very into the spirit of the upcoming holidays, we are sure that you're gonna make a lot of use of this week's episode. So let's get started. It's a no-brainer that what our life is and what it's gonna be comes down to a single thing, small decisions that we make daily. And it's tough for us people to accept that it is very little we could blame on the circumstances for the course of our lives. Life will give us hard lessons, of course, but we should realize something important and start this year off with this in mind. We for sure are in charge of our life and our future as we are in charge of our time. The beginning of each month always sounds fresh for new things. Moreover, the start of a new year brings special energy and encouragement. This period leaves some time for self-reflection and recapitulation of what has happened during the previous 12 months. And this analysis makes it clear this is what I'm not going to be doing anymore, or this is what I need to do more of. So New Year is a very special period, not just because of the joy that we find in the holiday season or the celebrations or parties, but it can give us an opportunity to start again and to think about what we have done and what we can change when it comes to our life. But although we believe that New Year resolutions and this perspective, this way of thinking is something common to the modern days, it actually originates in a quite distant past. Back in ancient times, Babylonians were the ones to invent something quite equivalent to today's New Year resolutions. Some 4,000 years ago, Babylonians were the first to create the New Year celebration, and only for them the year began in mid-March instead of January when we celebrate it today, since that was when the crops were planted. So in those times, and it doesn't really have to be ancient times, but back in the history when people's lives relied completely on crops, they saw it as something extremely important. This was a religious ceremony and it was known as Akitu. So during this holiday, Babylonians used to crown a new king or reaffirm the loyalty to the reigning king. The reigning king would be the king that is already on his duty. Babylonians also made promises to the gods to pay their debts or return any objects they had borrowed. These promises are considered the prototypes of New Year's resolutions. Babylonians also believed that if they kept to their word, their gods would bestow favor on them for the coming year. So they would be in favor of God and there would be a certain luck that would follow them throughout the year. It was thought that if they failed to keep the promises they have made before the new year, they would be out of God's favor, which for people who relied solely on crops would be devastating. In Rome, the emperor Julius Caesar reshaped the calendar and the year to start in January instead of March or something similar, and his people believed in Janus. It was a god that inhabited doorways, and January, this month, had a special meaning for the Roman people. They imagined that the Janus looked back into the previous year and in the future as well, so Romans made promises for the following year to him. But today we don't refer to this practice as a religious custom. Instead, we promise to ourselves that we are going to change our life for a bit in the time that's coming, and we make promises only to ourselves, not to any external power. And in case you haven't yet, maybe it's time to create your own resolution for this year, but maybe this time we can try doing it in English. And for that, we will need a bit of help, so we can consult our Grammar Corner. When we talk about the future, it can be tricky since there are a couple of different forms we can use to express the future. We will quickly go over of the most important usage of future tenses so that we can later use them and create our own plans and predictions for the upcoming period. Will is the simplest future form. Although it can serve you well in different occasions, it is used for general future, so something that may happen or may not happen. And some of the examples could be, we hope you will fly with us again. So when you were on a flight in the past, because now people don't really fly that often, but when we used to fly and travel, we could hear this phrase often. So we hope you will fly with us again. I will create New Year decorations. So something very useful to say at a moment. And another usage of will would be for a spontaneous future. So for some decision about a future that you make right at a moment of speaking. For example, your friend says, I don't have any papers left. And then you say, I'll lend you some. I'll bring you some books to read. So you're talking to a friend, he says that he's bored, and then you just say, okay, I'll bring you some books to read. Be going to is another form that we use, and we intend it for intentions. And for example, when we have intentions of doing something. For example, I'm going to practice more for this test. He is going to get a job after graduation. So those are the intentions of those people, like of these people. For example, when in the second example, when you said he's going to get a job after graduation, so probably you were talking to this person before this conversation and you were discussing his plans after graduation, and that's what he said. He plans to get a job, so you can say he's going to get a job. Also, we can use be going to when we want to make some assumptions based on the evidence. So that's very important thing, and I want to highlight it. When we base something on evidence, it serves as a sign mark for you to use going to as a form, and make notice of this if you need to do some English tests or any sort of written practices of English grammar. For example, look at this traffic. We're not going to arrive home in the next 2 hours. So you see the traffic, that's your evidence for making this assumption that you're not going to arrive home in any time soon. For example, you could say, my grades are terrible. I'm going to fail this semester. So from what you can see from your grades at the moment, you can conclude that you're going to fail the semester, which is also an assumption. It doesn't have to happen, but you base it on certain evidence. Another form would be present continuous, and we cover that as a present time, but it can be used with following the same rules, just in the future context. In this case, we use it for arranged future, for something that's agreed, for agreements between two people, something that is arranged or set up already. So we are seeing him tonight. we already arranged it, so we are seeing him tonight. Or what are you up to this summer? I'm traveling the world as a hitchhiker. Okay? And that's also something that you arranged previously. Our final form of future tense would be present simple for the future, and we use it when the future we're discussing is defined by a schedule, by a certain timetable. So you could say the train leaves at 8, or semester starts in mid-February, something that's planned and that's already set, maybe set in stone. We can see it in that context. Something that's already set and something that is defined by schedule, by calendar, timetable, or something similar. Since we are prepared for this conversation, we can start talking about how to make and keep our resolutions. Back to the times people made promises to God, so they kind of had more of motivation to keep those promises and to make them true because they believed in that superpower and they believed that their lives are going to be ruined if they don't follow what they promised to do. Nowadays, we don't really have it. We rely only on ourselves and on our limited willpower. And that's why a lot of people find it hard to keep to their promises in this context, to the promises that we set for ourselves, something as New Year resolution. If you are like most of the people, you probably failed to keep your New Year resolution. And actually, some studies showed that 45% of Americans make New Year resolutions, but only 8% of them are successful in keeping them. So the vast majority of people actually fail to keep decisions they make. Scientists at 2 renowned Swedish universities, we can take a small break and discuss this word that I just mentioned. So I said renowned Swedish universities. So what does this word mean? Renown stands for something famous, something well-known, or something that's talked about in public. So something famous and known by a good word. That's another good application of this word. So when someone or something is renowned for something, it means that they're famous because they're doing something very well. It's a good context. It has a good connotation, positive connotation. So we said that scientists at 2 renowned Swedish universities conducted a study on these promising decisions and discovered that a key to success in keeping to your goal is actually the way you phrase your resolution. So this may be surprising or may not, but they meant that we will be more effective if we decide on what we are going to do instead of what we are not going to do. When we see some setbacks and see certain problems, we believe that we go by these negative formulations. For example, I will not procrastinate this year, or I won't be eating sweets anymore. These experiments confirm that you are more likely to fail if you said, I will not procrastinate this year, compared to if you have said, I will work more effectively. So their data proved that this positive connotation of deciding what you are going to do would help you a lot in achieving your goal. I also mentioned another new word that we can highlight for this time. It's called procrastinate. It's all over the internet, and you may have already wondered, what does it mean if you came across this word in an article or in a YouTube video or in a podcast? So let's explain it. Procrastination refers to the act when we try to delay something or postpone some action that we have to take on. For example, people often use it in the case of work or schoolwork, housework, anything that is on your shoulders, some weight that you have to do, and you're not doing it. For example, you're watching a TV instead of doing your homework, or you are scrolling through your social media instead of working. Those would be the forms of procrastination. In the same manner, in a renowned book called The Science of Habit, it is said that if you want to change something, you consider a bad habit in your life. This whole book is about the power of habit and how habit itself could change our lives, but we can leave that for another occasion and say that refer to this concept that is useful for a New Year resolution story. The author of this book claims that if we want to remove a bad habit, it's not enough just to remove it. We would be far more successful if we insert another good habit, a good one, instead of a bad one. The psychology proved that that's how our mind works, actually. Specialists also recommend to be as specific as possible and to set clear but also short-term goals so we could make ourselves accountable and we could track our progress. Also, we should make sure that our decisions are attainable and achievable. And in the end, we should be declaring our statements publicly. We could share it with a friend or our significant others, whoever we find our support, social support, because it's proved that if we have support around us when we are trying to change something or build something in our lives, even though it doesn't sound very big or significant, having someone to share it with will help us stay on track, and we will feel a responsibility to someone, not only to us, as Babylonians or Romans believed that they had a responsibility towards God to keep their promises. So in the same manner, we should find our social support and try to communicate our ideas. As we have learned about this custom, we have also learned about necessary grammar for talking about it and some new words. We could wrap it all up by making one collective New Year resolution. So we could bring up an imaginary person, our imaginary volunteer, who would create a New Year resolution and recap everything that we have covered today. So our representative would be Andrew K. And Andrew K. speaking. During this year, lockdowns changed my life. Being stuck at work from home mode, I found it hard to get used to it. I was very stressed and fell out of my usual routines. I don't read anymore. I don't cook as much as I used to. From what I achieved at work, my career is not going to get as high as I wanted it to be. And that's why I want to implement these rules for myself in this upcoming year. I will read a couple of pages of a book each morning while I drink my coffee. I will cook meals for the every lunch of the week on Sunday so I can eat healthy. I will work more effectively so I can spend more time with my family and friends. Our imaginary friend Andrew got this assignment right, and hopefully he inspired you to reflect on your 2020 and think of possible improvements for the upcoming 2021. Share your decisions with loved ones, and you could also share it with us. Thank you for being with Learn Languages HD Audio today. We wish you happy holidays and a nice start of the new year. Again, make sure to learn something new today and expand your horizons for a little bit, but also share it with someone else. Thank you for joining us, and we really hope to meet you in the next episode. Bye-bye.